introduction to fertility in your uniform program. It's really going to be a which report and why, and I just want to show you how you can navigate your way around the program. Emma will be there for any questions, so you can type questions in, and if we can't address them during the webinar, then we will come back to you afterwards, either by email or we'll give you a call. So to make a start, the first thing we're going to take a look at is on the dashboard. So this dashboard's okay, but I would always add things like preg rate on there. So just as a refresher, you'll see a little cog on the right-hand side, and I'm going to scroll down, and we're going to pick out insemination rate, preg rate, and conception rate. Make sure the values are correct, because the values you put in here determine whether it's green, which is good, you're ahead of target, or red, obviously, which is bad. So it's important these values are good and bad are correct. But I think this just means now that everybody can look at it and they can say, in fact, the preg rate looks really good. The insemination rate is also good, and the conception rate is also good. So everything's on track there. Okay, so where do we find reporting on fertility? Cow's head, obviously, and over to fertility. Now, there's a lot of menus here, and I appreciate time is valuable, so I'm not going to go through everyone. I'm just going to show you what I think are the most important ones. So we have fertility analysis overview, and then we have the one for the calving group. They look kind of similar, but they are very different reports. The overview, we're looking over a period of time. So we're looking at the whole herd, not just cows that calved in a particular period. We're looking at everything. So your default setting is generally set at 12 months. And then you'll see down here, you have a summary. Now, if you selected that for 6 months, the summary would then obviously be for that 6 months. So you're in control of how you actually want to look at this information. So I would go to properties. I would then select it yearly, and I'd probably just go, let's have a look at the last 3 years data. And if I want that to be my default on the program, then I just put a tick in there, save settings. So these are the options: weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly. I picked 1 year, so that's 1 year per period, and I'm looking at 3 years worth of data. Okay, I can look at cow numbers. So the first block is the milking herd with cow numbers on it. Average days in milk, you see that's going up slightly. Average 305 in 2019 was yeah, big improvement. And we see we're dropping a little bit at the moment. So if we then scroll down, we then start looking at the young stock. So the figures that we've got here will be things like average age at first calving, age at insemination. So are we serving the young stock early enough, and are they calving in early enough? And you'll notice there's a little blue eye here. If you just click on that, these are all the cows in the calculation that gave us this figure of 25 months, 25.5 months. And if you want to just kind of look a bit deeper into it, if you click on the column here, that's the youngest one that came in, 23.8, and the oldest was 28.8. So you can always go back and look at the individual cows in the calculation. Okay, we go down a little bit further, and we start looking at days to pregnant, and we see that's going up a little bit again. I look at the predicted calving index, and again, that's going up a little bit again there. Suspicious data, that's really data that we don't like the look of. So it could be the fact that the cows calved, but we never had an insemination, just for example. And that will actually flag it up. So if you see suspicious data and you've got a real lot there, give their help desk a call and we'll have a look into it. But the lower that figure is, then generally the better the quality of the data. If you get stuck on anything and you think, well, I'm not quite sure about that, what does that actually mean? You'll see there, if you click on the tab explanation, that will just tell you what's behind what lies behind the figure. So that's the first report. Just remember properties, that's how you can change the periods. And you can even set it so what's the end date. So I'm picking now, but I could have picked the end of May, for example. So you're in control of how that report is portrayed. Okay, so that's that one there, overview. I'll just take you quickly through this one. And on this one, what we're looking at kind of cohort analysis. We're looking at a calving group. So in October, we had 14 cows calve. 9 of them were cows. We can then go down and we can see what their current status is, average days to first in heat, animals not inseminated after 85 days in milk, but you're looking really at this block of cows that calved in that particular month. And then we obviously have submission rate. So it's important that your voluntary waiting period is set correctly. And we take the voluntary waiting period on this farm, I think it's 60 days plus 21. You can change it just for the reports. If you go into properties, you'll see here, it shows you the true voluntary waiting period, and you can change it for this report in this section. If you want to change it across the program, then you'll need to do that in general settings. Okay, so 2 reports. First one, an overview, looking over a period of time. This one, looking at a group of animals that calved in a specific period. And that could be months, could be quarters, could be years. Okay, if we then go across to here, herd fertility status. This report, that's showing my voluntary waiting period here set at 60 days. Each dot is a cow. So that's 2046. I can see that she's been open for 54 days. But it's a good way just to pick out problem cows. So I can see here, there's this cow here. She's been in milk 360 days. We have inseminated her, but to date, we don't know the outcome. So it's just a good way of looking at the individual cows, their status, obviously, and their milk production. So we'll just close that. Calving pattern. Just one thing I wanted to make you aware of here. We're able to look forward, and the way I've set this one up is only show the pregnant cows. So if I take that out, you'll see now this is a projection. This is what we expect to happen in the next 12 months. But if you want to do this report where we actually know that the cows are pregnant, just pop a tick in there, say OK, and then we can see how many young stock, how many cows have actually been PD positive when they're likely to calve in. Okay, next report, insemination analysis. Fertility problems, just go into your program, you'll see it, it's obvious. Cows with being the highest number of days open, highest number of days inseminations. But I just wanted to make you aware of this report because there's a very good summary that you can email to people. If you're having problems emailing it, phone the help desk, will show you how to do it. But if you have an issue, I think it's a good one to send to the vet or the consultant, the advisor, whoever it happens to be. So the first one we see here is, that's the voluntary waiting period set at 60 days. This is days in milk to first service. So if I look at this cow here, so I just put, all I've done is just pop the cursor over it. I can see her cow number. She was actually served at 25 days in milk. This cow was served at 25 days in milk. So this probably wasn't intentional. What was the outcome of the service? Well, it was unsuccessful. We know that because it's red. So the first thing looking at this one is I would change the voluntary waiting period because we're not serving at 60 days. We need to make a change on that and move that to 40 days because that's pretty much when they start serving. So again, in properties, that's where we can make the change, just like I showed you in the previous report. Also, you can select, and this bit's important, you can select the period that you want to look at. So that's all within properties. We have a Q sum, and again, in properties, you can define it and say, just look over a period, or look at the last 100 inseminations, or 500 inseminations, whatever you want. And what this does is it shows you graphically the outcome of consecutive services. So if I could put the mouse across to here, you'll see that it goes in order of date. And what I'm going to do here is just blow this one up. So I left click and just drag. And what it means is this service here was successful for this cow. This dot was a service, and you see the cow on the right-hand side. She held, she held, she held, and she held. But then this period here, we started hitting some problems. So I can see the insemination date was the end of January. And all these cows here, each dot was a service that was unsuccessful. This one was good, but then again, unsuccessful. And then we started picking up again. So it's just a slightly different way of looking at it. And I just want to make you aware of this one as well. If you go to the filter button, what you're able to do is you're able to break it down, for example, and just show graphically the inseminations from a particular bull. Or if you wanted, you could even do it from a particular inseminator. So rather than just looking at the figure, you can look at it graphically, which I think, at times is a better way of looking at information. Okay, then we're going to go across to here. We're going to go across to summary. And I think what happens, a lot of people look at this report and they go down to here and they go, well, okay, that's fine. And then they close it. But if you look on the top right-hand side, this is just page 1 of 7. So there's actually a lot of information. The results, this bit here, the date range, that's selected by you in properties. So go to properties and select the date range you want. Then you can just step through it. So this is the one we've looked at already, days in milk to first service. We're then able to look at days to pregnancy. Then we start looking at the bulls. So each individual bull, how many times it was used on young stock, a heifer and a cow, and what the outcome was. And you'll see there, if we see a symbol, just go back a page, you'll see that when we use sex semen, we're actually able to see that as well. If I go forward just a little bit further, scroll down, you'll see then we're actually able to do a breakdown of the individual inseminator. We go to the next page. We can then do a breakdown and look at sex semen, non-sex semen, and see how effective that's been. And then finally, if we've selected the type of heat, so that's important, that's on daily events. If you want to do that, you need to go into settings and select register by estrus sign. That will then give you a drop-down list so that you can actually say the type of heat that it was. And then we're able to look at that as a breakdown as well. So there's a lot of information just on this one report. We then summarize it with natural heats and managed heats. So we'll close that. And all that information, I'm just going to go back a stage. That's all under insemination analysis. And if you just want to keep that one handy, just right click, left click, add to toolbar, and there it is. So that's now up on your favorite screen. And if we go into it and you select summary, that's the report that we've just been looking at. Okay. So the last one I wanted to show you and make you aware of was the US KPIs. This is part of the Big Farm module. I think, yeah, most people probably have this now. If you don't have it, if you just call Emma, she'll put it on as a trial. And I think it's a really, really important part of the program. So when it comes up, you're able to look at it in days in milk. I tend to look at it first by calendar date. So I change the group by from days in milk to calendar date. And then what we have are the 3-week periods here. So if I'm just putting the mouse over it so I can actually see what the periods were. And I'll just highlight this one here was the end of March to the 19th of April. So we had 32 cows eligible to be inseminated, and we actually inseminated 21. The insemination rate was 65%. Is that good in the context of this herd? Well, if I look at the average is 64, so it's pretty much on target. But if I look at the previous months, well, previous 3-week intervals, we were much higher. We were up at 80, 75, 80. And following that, we went back up to 80. So that was low. So we first of all say, okay, are we serving enough cows? And then the next question is, if we're serving enough cows, are the cows actually becoming pregnant? So out of the 32, we actually got, this is 32 cows that were eligible, not 32 cows that were served. That's important. 32 cows that were eligible because we only served 21. We actually got 6 pregnant, so our preg rate is only 19%. Was that good for the period? Well, not if we compare it with the average, which is a really, really high 29%. So there's a lot of information on that. And again, I think what happens is we tend to close it, but we can actually really start digging a lot deeper. If you select conception rate, first thing you see there is a breakdown based on number of inseminations. But if you go down to this little tab here, group by, there's a lot of information then. So we can break it down, for example, by lactation number within the herd for that determined period. We can break it down by the individual inseminator. We can go with the individual bull. And what you can then do is you can select the bulls that you've used the most just by clicking on that column, and then we can see the conception rates. If you then want to take it a wee bit further, if you split it into periods, so I just ticked in there, split into periods, it then breaks it down for all the bulls that we used in April, all the bulls that we used in May, March, and so on. So all that information can be broken down. So I'll just take that off, split into periods. We go a little bit further down. Does the day of the week have an influence? Calendar date just gives us the figures for January, February, March. But also then we can start looking at by estrus sign, so the type of heat. And then again, similar to the other report, whether it was a natural heat or whether it was a managed heat. Just one last thing to say on properties. Again, always properties to change things. You can select the groups. So you say which groups you want included. I know some customers now, they're using barn groups. So maybe they have Holsteins and maybe another breed. So the Holsteins go into one barn group, the others go into a separate barn group. That's a way that, again, that you can filter this report. So just select barn group A or barn group B, so that all the figures aren't amalgamated. So that's quite important. This one here, again, if I go to here, this is where you can select the date, the period you want to look at. And just watch out here. This one, an overview, it looks at all the cows that were eligible within that period. The other one, it looks at cows that were eligible within that period if they calve within that period. So that's the analysis by calving group. So generally the default will be set as the overview. Okay, that's a kind of 15-minute trip around uniform fertility reporting, which report and why. I think with things like this, it's really important that if you want more information, yeah, just give us a call and we can log in.